Hey guys, welcome back to another interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with the tier list for patch 3.5b. Now of course, as mentioned in the patch reviews, as well as by Riot themselves, this patch will last almost a full month, all the way up to the 12th of January, and therefore I've decided to release this tier list, and I've tried to do it as soon as possible, of course, because this patch is going to last an extremely long time, at least compared to usual, and therefore this is going to be a lot more relevant to a lot of people. Now honestly, as you guys can already see, not very much has changed. We do have the addition of Lillia, who can be played top as well as in the jungle, but aside from that, the changes are not very much, so we don't necessarily have a lot to discuss. Now Aatrox did, actually I don't even think he got nerfed. Alright, he did get nerfed in this patch, but honestly the nerfs didn't matter too much. He's still really strong. Can carry your team really easily. Same thing with Gwen and Akali. These three are the champs that can carry your team really hard. Wukong is a lot better in terms of team fights, but he cannot solo 1v9 carry, but he is still really good in like 1v1s and 2v2s, particularly when you're ahead. And yeah, so the best three champions, basically, I should have moved Wukong after Akali, but the best three champions are Aatrox, Gwen, and Akali, because all three of them can pretty much just carry your team. Although with Akali, you could possibly mess up your team comp because she is not very tanky, whereas at least Aatrox and Gwen can be frontline. Lastly, we're going to talk about Lillia. So Lillia is, of course, the new addition, and the whole deal with Lillia is that she basically attacks people and then she stacks up her passive, and that gives her movement speed. Now, why is she S+ in the Baron lane? Because in the Baron lane, generally you're against melee champions. Now, Lillia is a melee champion, but she does have really decent range on her Q and her W as well. So, with the movement speed, you can very easily kite around. Now, think about Lillia versus Aatrox. Aatrox is going to have a hard time hitting those sweet spots because Lillia can prance all around him. Gwen has a really weak early game, so Lillia can bully her in lane. Kind of the same thing with Wukong. Lillia can trade pretty well with Wukong. Akali is probably the biggest problem for Lillia in terms of the S+ tier champions, but then you move on to the S tier champions. Like you take a look at champions like Garen, Sion, Set, Renekton, or maybe not Renekton, but you take a look at those champions. Lillia can really easily just continuously poke them with her Q and chunk them out, and pretty much just win lane in that way. Not necessarily even have to kill them, but just force them off the wave, force them to recall, etc. So Lillia is also a carry who, of course, is an AP carry, builds AP, and of course, again, can carry your team, so of course is in the S+ tier. Now, I did reorder quite a number of picks. One of them is Sion. I moved Sion way up in the S tier, and the reason I did this is because honestly, the only reason why he's not in S+ is he isn't actually good in every single matchup. But in the matchup that he is good, he is like S++ kind of tier. And what do I mean by matchups when he's good? I actually explained this a number of times, but I'm going to explain it again. Basically, you need to have someone who can 1v1 deal with a Sion who is split pushing, and not a lot of champions can do that. If you take a look at like the S+ tier, for example, Aatrox perhaps is alright against Sion. Gwen is also alright because she does do true damage. But you take a look at like Wukong, Akali, and Lillia. Now, Wukong does build stuff like Sundera and Black Cleaver, but he's not going to do any damage to Sion. Lillia does do true damage, but she's not going to do any damage to Sion. And Akali cannot deal with Sion at all. So basically, to deal with Sion, you need a very specialized pick that's good at 1v1s. Champions like Fiora and Camille, for example, who are in the A+ tier, or maybe something like a Jax as well. However, they can deal with Sion really effectively, and not many champions can do that. So Sion is actually really strong, because if he simply just builds a hull breaker and keeps on pushing the side lanes, basically the whole game revolves around him, because the enemy has to always send 2 to 3 members to stop him from pushing. And when they do this, the enemy team can get towers on the other side of the map, they can get Baron on the other side of the map, which happens very often when you're against a Sion and he knows what he's doing. And you literally can do nothing about it. You're stuck in a catch-22 situation where it's either you stop the Sion from pushing and getting your inhib, or you stop the enemy team from getting Baron. And either way, it's bad. So basically, Sion is like S++ in matches where no one can deal with him, like 1v1 or 2v1 even. Yeah, those matches are pretty much doomed for the team that doesn't have the Sion. So I moved Set up as well, and the reason I did this is because I actually feel Set is really good in terms of both in lane as well as in like mid and late game. Like his role in the team is really good. He can engage and he's really tanky, and that shield is really good at baiting enemies. Like it's really often in matches where a low health set baits an enemy to chase him, and he has the grid bar and he gets the shield from the W and that guy just dies. Not necessarily to him, but maybe to his teammates, and I feel that way too many people fall for that trap. That's not why I put him in the S tier though, but that is one of the reasons why he is good, and a lot of things are really good about him, of course. So looking at the rest of the tier list, not too much has changed, to be honest. So we're not really going to talk about that. We're instead going to just move on and talk about the jungle. Now the jungle has the most congested S plus tier, because honestly when I was trying to find out, or not find out, but trying to decide who to take out of S plus to try to keep it to 5, I really couldn't decide, because I feel that these are all the same power level for different reasons. Now Lee Sin, we all know, is basically always going to be the best jungler if you're good, because he is really strong early game, and if you can get yourself and your lanes ahead, pretty much you can win the game like in the first 5 minutes of the game. Now Olaf did get his jungle clear nerf like 2 patches ago, but after he got that armor shred on his Q, honestly that has just made him completely broken in my opinion, because he has CC immunity which counters like a vast majority of the cast, especially carry style champions. Like think about a Varus or a Lux, for example. The only thing they can do when someone is running at them and try to kill them is to root them. Varus with his ult, Lux with the Q. Either way is you have to root them. Now, literally, Olaf can immune that with his ultimate and just run them down. There literally is no counter to Olaf for a lot of champions, like, again, like Varus, like Lux, a lot of the ADCs, a lot of the mid lane mages can do nothing against him, because he just immune CC, runs straight at you and kills you. So he really is very strong, although the only real problem with him is that he is kind of a stat stick champion whose early game is really important. If you get ahead in the early game, you basically snowball and win. If you fall behind early game, you basically run at people, but you can kill no one and you just die. But you know, more often than not, Olaf is a really strong 1v1 champion who should get ahead in the early game, either through ganks, killing the enemy jungler, or some other method. But basically, he is really good. Now Aatrox and Yone, we all know are basically there simply because they are completely busted at this point in time. So that's why busted champions always are busted in the jungle as well as in whatever lane they should be. For Aatrox is top and for Yone is mid, but since they're so good, they can also jungle. Now Lillia, whose rightful role is jungle, we've basically covered her in the Baron lane already, but with the jungle Lillia, it's basically the same thing, except this time you're just ganking around and just using your movement speed to get into lane and to get off the ganks, etc. And also we didn't talk about something like her sleep, which you can get on multiple people and you can sort of win the team fight through that. Now something I will mention that you guys have to take note of when playing Lillia is the fact that she is an AP carry, but she is melee and she is squishy. So the main issue with Lillia is that you kind of need either, you don't really need a frontline, but what you need is limited CC on the enemy team, because if you get locked down, you're basically dead. Like if you get hit by a Varus ultimate, if you get hit by, you know, a Blitzcrank hook or something, you get hit by any kind of like big CC that locks you down, you're basically just dead like any other like mage or any other marksman kind of champion. So basically you're just done for. Alright, so now let's talk about some other champions. So I've actually moved Graves down from the S plus to the S tier, and although I still think Graves is really good, I think he has a big fatal flaw, which is the fact that he needs items to really be good. Like in the early game, he is pretty useless. Like you can gank, but your ganks are not effective because you don't have the damage to kill people. You really need the enemy to be very far overextended to actually pull off a successful gank, and that's sort of the main issue. Or you need a lot of setup from your laners, which is really hard to do in solo queue. But when you hit like 2 or 3 items, you become insanely strong. And like 3 items onwards, you can basically begin to carry and take over a game. 2 items is where you first start getting strong. 1 item is like, you know, meh kind of thing. So there are many games where basically before you can reach 2 items, your team has already lost you the game, which is why I don't think he is in the S plus anymore, because he cannot really carry a game by himself if his team has already lost him the game. Like, there are games where you can carry your team even from a huge deficit, but there are games where we reach 2 items, you already have like a 10-0 ADC, and you have like a 10-0 top laner or something like that. There's no way you're carrying that team, even when you hit like 3 items, basically. So that's sort of the issue with Graves. Now, technically, other champions like Kayn also have the same issue. Now, briefly touching on Kayn, his blue form is still trash. Shadow Assassin is still trash. Even though it did get that buff, I don't really think it's really good. I think that the main problem with him is that there is a problem with his passive. And if they don't fix that problem, basically he's not going to be good. The red form Rast, or the darkened form, as they like to call it in Wild Rift, is still pretty good. But it's just nothing amazing, basically. Now, I've moved Diana up all the way from, I think it was like the B tier or something like that, because after like all the hype about Diana Jungle, I recently found that Diana Jungle is actually pretty insane, because I tested it myself, and I tested multiple builds. You can go for like a fighter build, or you can go for like a one-shot build. The one-shot build is really popular, because you can just go in and like ult some carry, and they instantly are deleted, which is pretty amazing. But the new jungle has really helped her, because now she clears the jungle pretty quickly, which she didn't actually do before, and she can basically just carry as well. So basically that's why I moved Diana all the way up. Now, someone else that I moved up also is Rammus. Now, you might be thinking like, why Rammus? Because Rammus like is a tank. He can't really like carry a team. But the issue with Rammus is that his ganks are so strong. Like, all you really need to do is just spam gank and like not focus on farming. Just focus on like getting your buffs and just ganking non-stop. Like, you gank someone, blow their flash, you gank them again, and they're pretty much, gonna die. And especially in like low elo, like maybe below master, people don't really respect Rammus, and Rammus catches so many people out, and he can get fed and his teammates can get fed, and you just basically win the game simply off of the goal difference, of the teams. But of course, again, he is a tank. He can't exactly carry, so that's why he isn't really all that good. Anyways, that is it for jungle. Now we're going to talk about the mid lane. Okay, so again, honestly, mid lane, nothing too much has changed. The main kind of change that we made for mid lane is really only one change, which is moving Vex back and moving Ahri up. Now, here is the rationale why I think Akali is the best, followed by Yone, Ahri, etc. Obviously, Akali, if you're skilled at her, you can basically just assassinate whoever you want, and she has AoE as well as an assassin, so she has always been an insane champion if you're good at her. Yone is somewhat the same, but he has that safety tool of using his E, which I still feel many people are actually not misusing, but are not using to its full potential. Most people use E right at the start, which is nothing wrong. But another way you guys can use your E, just a food for thought, is that you can actually use it in the middle of a fight as a dash to dodge skill shots and recall to your E to get that unstoppable to immune CC as well. Not simply just Eing from behind your tower, getting into a fight, and then just Eing all the way back to where you are. Is not always the best way to use your E, which I feel that all people that I've seen actually all use their E like that. But yeah, so Ahri, really strong catch potential, really strong resets and healing of the resets. There's so many times where a low health Ahri goes back to full health off of like a triple kill or like 3 takedowns, and then just takes over the rest of the team fight and kills the remaining 2 people. Cassidy is really strong, but he does have a weak early game, which is a lot better in Wild Rift than PC, but he still has a weak early game that can be taken advantage of, so he's a little bit more behind. And Vex is the most behind because I feel that she is the most fair champion. She can get resets and she can just one-shot people if she gets a hit, but the fact that she has to throw her whole body into the enemy team and have to hit her out like long range most of the time, makes it really fair in the sense that if you screw up, you're in the middle of the enemy team and you are dead. Of course, the flip side of that is that you're in the middle of the enemy team and you one-shot the whole enemy team. Of course, that does happen as well. I feel that Vex is the most fair champion out of them all. Now, as we all know, we have a fat S tier with a ton of champions, so I feel that mid lane is a role where there are plenty of viable champions, sort of similar to jungle. Like, a lot of champions are pretty amazing in the mid lane when they are played optimally. So, here is you guys can look at the rest of the tier list yourself. And yeah, that's pretty much it for mid lane. Now we can talk about ADCs. Okay, so when it comes to ADCs, basically not too much has changed. Now, Kai'Sa, Lucian, and Ezreal are still at the top for various reasons. Now, Kai'Sa's early game is a little bit weaker. However, she does have a decent early game, like when she gets her evolves, and she has a strong mid and late game as well. Assassin style ADC. If you're good at her, she's gonna be good. Lucian's strong, very strong early game, and doesn't fall off too hard in the mid and late game. Although he does slightly. And he also has a range issue, but overall I think it is still fine. If you're good at Lucian, he's going to work for you as well. Ezreal, we have the safety, we have the poke, and if you're good at him, really, really hard for people to kill you unless you yourself make a mistake by overextending. If you're not greedy for kills, it's almost impossible to die on Ezreal because you have Flash and you have Arcane Shift, and supposedly you have teammates who will protect you as well. It's really, really difficult to kill an Ezreal unless you yourself make a mistake, put yourself out of position, or something like that. Alright, or misuse your E, something like that. So, anyways, S tier, I moved Corki down from S plus to S because Corki isn't good in every situation. He's simply the best AP option you have in the Dragon lane / Duo lane / ADC role. However, obviously that occasion is kind of rare, honestly. So he is. I don't really think it makes sense putting a champion that isn't always good in the S plus. So I moved him down to S. I moved Caitlyn up by a position because I feel like Caitlyn is actually very, very dominant and pretty underrated. He has a very oppressive laning phase. You can bully people very, very hard. And very strong late game as well. Of course, she does have that mid game power trough that she's notorious for. Same goes for Tristana. But in the early and late game, she is an absolute monster. Now, again, we have Xayah, the very underrated ADC. Who of course does very well into teams that want to go into you, like Trindamirs, Rengars, Katarinas, so many champions want to just run and jump on you. So Xayah is really good against teams that have multiple of those. Now Vayne, I moved up from A plus to S. Now why is this the case? Now honestly, if you ask me, like out of all of the champions here, I think that Vayne is the hardest carry ADC you could possibly get. The only reason I'm not putting her in S plus is because of how weak her early game is. Her early game is complete garbage. However, when she gets to like 2-3 items, she starts to come online, and that's where she starts to carry. The issue is sometimes your team loses you the game before that point. Same story as Graves. Like if you can't get to that point and your team is getting destroyed, let's say your support is inting, your whole team is like not doing well, and your support is inting the enemy laners, you can barely even farm under tower safely without getting dived, and the game is just over with. You'll never reach that like 2-3 item power spike. When you actually do, the enemies are already going to be on like 5 items, assuming they haven't even ended the game, and it's pretty much over for you. You cannot really do anything. However, if your team doesn't int too hard, or miraculously your team gets a hit, Vayne is absolutely amazing. She crushes absolutely anybody. There is the only counter to Vayne is CC, which is of course the counter to a lot of champions, but she can dodge skill shots easily by rolling around. It doesn't matter if you're a squishy or you're a tank, she pretty much kills you in the same amount of time because of her true damage. She shreds Mundos, Darius's, and whoever else, just instantly, which is one of the reasons why I love playing Vayne. By the way, guys, we have an insane Vayne video coming up, in the next week or so you guys gotta look out for that. And yeah, the rest of the tier list from A plus and below basically remains the same. So now we can move on to talking about our supports. Sounding like a broken record here, but again in supports pretty much nothing has changed. Karma, Nami, and Lulu are pretty much still the best 3 supports without question. Also, we're gonna have a Lulu video coming out in 2 days from when this video is released, so you guys can look out for that. We played Lulu in ranked and it went well. You guys can see Lulu complete guide, and we're gonna talk a lot more about Lulu over there. But somehow, when Ashe support first became a thing when Imperial Mandate was added to the game, I forgot to add her in my tier list, and I basically talked about it in that tier list video, but in every future tier list video, which is like 5 now or something like that, maybe not that much, maybe 4 or 3, I pretty much forgot about Ashe completely in the support role. And the huge issue with this is that when I play support autofill, I normally pick Ashe if the team comp is suitable for it. I'm gonna actually do an Ashe support commentary guide really soon, and talk a little bit more about Ashe support. But Honestly, I feel that Ash support is absolutely amazing. The only reason she's not S plus in my personal opinion, is that she cannot be picked in every team, whereas like Karma, Nami, and Lulu can. Now, this could be a little bit biased because I'm not really good at support champions. So, when I get support, I generally play Ash, who is obviously an ADC in the support role. But I feel that Ash brings so much value to her team. She has that global ultimate for the stun. She has the vision with the hawk shot, which in the support role is huge, more so than the ADC role. She has slows with like everything in her kit. And she also gives speed up. So she slows down enemies and speeds up allies when you get Imperial Mandate. She can easily apply grievous wounds because of her volley. And she can shred people's armor with the Black Cleaver. Like, she can basically do it all. So in my opinion, Ash is like my favorite support, and it's actually one of the best supports. But I recognize that Ash cannot be picked in every team, because in teams that you don't have a tank, Ash support sucks. Because you don't have any frontline, and you're not a frontline, and you're gonna get focused, and you're just gonna die on repeat. So if there's no frontline, I would go for something like a Nautilus personally. But yeah, so Ash can't be really picked in every team. Now the rest of the support tier list pretty much remains the same, aside from Yuumi, who have moved up from B all the way to A+. Now, why is this the case? Now, Yuumi, in my opinion, is still trash in the early game. She is basically non-existent in the early game. Her heal is barely noticeable. I'm not kidding. Her heal is barely noticeable unless you're attacking somebody. So maybe Yuumi with Draven in the early game is fine, because Draven is probably going to be attacking the like enemy champion. But like, let's say if you have like a Yuumi with like I don't know, weak early game, like a Vayne, for example. Like Vayne Yuumi in the late game is absolutely insane. Probably no one can kill them. However, how are you going to get through the laning phase? Like, Yuumi's heal is really small. Assuming you're getting harassed like under tower, and you have a hard time hitting minions because you're getting zoned away. Yuumi's heal barely gives you any kind of sustain. Her Q poke is really, number one, is hard to hit. Assuming even you can hit it, it's not all that much. And her W boosting your stats doesn't really help in the early game. Her ult is probably the only use she has in the early stages of the game. However, if you get to the late game, or maybe even mid game, or rather it's and you have someone who's fed on your team, Yuumi can basically win the whole game for your team together with that fed person. So for example, even if Yuumi is on an ADC, the ADC is like 0 and 4, it doesn't matter if, let's say you have a top lane, let's say you have a Darius, he's 5 and 0, Yuumi hops on the Darius becomes unkillable, just starts stacking on everybody, resets and kills basically everybody, because he can't die because of Yuumi, he gets more damage because of Yuumi, etc, etc. So basically, Yuumi just needs one person on her team to be able to carry, and Yuumi is going to be amazing. Of course, the flip side also applies. If no one on Yuumi's team can carry, her whole team is feeding, it's done for. Yuumi is basically half a support, because she basically, her whole role is to make someone 1.5 of a champion. But if everyone else is like sucking, then she really can't do anything at all. So anyways, that is basically it for the tier list for patch 3.5b. Not a lot to cover, because we've pretty much covered everyone in the last tier list on patch 3.5a. Honestly, I would even recommend you check that one out if you want more in-depth explanations, because we talk about almost every champion in that one, just as a soft reset to talking about the tier lists. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and it helped you guys. Thanks for watching the video, and goodbye.